Advaita presents The One Within, the Heart of Hindu Philosophy, written by Vikas Agarwal, narrated by Dharmesh. Author's Notes. This book began as a responsibility. I wanted my children to understand the spiritual tradition of the land they come from, not the cultural or ritual layers, but the essence, the philosophy, the inner science. The gods, the stories, the rituals, the mantras, though beautiful in their own ways, are the ladders that help us climb. But the destination is always the same. The discovery that consciousness connects all beings the way the ocean connects its waves. Throughout my life, I have seen Hinduism misunderstood, dismissed, or reduced to stereotypes. And I have often seen both enticement and coercion used to draw Hindus away from their own tradition toward religions that define themselves through exclusivity. And somewhere in witnessing all this, a will to act rose within me. It was Swadharma, a clear knowing that I needed to write. I needed to articulate the heart of Hindu philosophy, distilled to its purest insight as a testament to the tradition that does not define itself through rituals or belief, but through seeking and direct realization. Hindu philosophy is often obscured by its outer forms, but at its core, Hinduism is a path of realization. It teaches that we are one with all life and that every sincere path ultimately turns inward toward the same truth. Its purpose is not belief, but awakening to our true self. This book is my offering to my children and to anyone seeking clarity about the universal heart of Hindu philosophy. A heart that does not demand conversion, does not insist on a single way, and does not claim ownership of truth. It invites each seeker to discover the light already within without prescribing an exclusive narrow path. This book is simply my attempt to articulate the inner science of this tradition, offered without expectation, born only of Swadharma. I place this work on the altar without attachment to its results. The fruits are not mine. This is my small act of service to the tradition that formed me. With sincerity and devotion, I place this book at the feet of Lord Shri Krishna, who teaches that every action becomes worship when offered without expectation. The rest I leave in his hands.
Prologue. A note on the texts. The philosophy distilled in this book is drawn liberally from the two foundational pillars of Hinduism, the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. These texts are the source code for Hindu thought and the eternal wellspring of wisdom that informs every chapter. We do not treat these scriptures as historical accounts of events, but as a roadmap of the inner landscape. The Upanishads, the wisdom of the forest. The word Upanishad means sitting down near. Upanishads are a collection of philosophical texts that form the conclusive part of the Vedas. They are not concerned with rituals or gods, but with the nature of ultimate reality, Brahman, and the individual self, Atman. The setting of the Upanishads is often intimate and serene. A wise teacher seated under a tree or in a quiet forest hermitage, engaged in direct conversation with a sincere student. These texts capture the moment a disciple asks the ultimate question, "Who am I?" and the master gently guides them to the realization of the truth within. They are a record of realized truth that invites the student to experience the same insights. The Upanishads reveal the nature of reality. The Bhagavad Gita reveals the way to live it. The Bhagavad Gita, the Song of God. The Bhagavad Gita is the most famous and accessible of all Hindu scriptures. While the Upanishads are dialogues set in meditative quiet, the Gita unfolds in a moment of extreme crisis and action, a battlefield. It is a conversation between the warrior prince Arjuna and his charioteer Krishna, who is the manifestation of the divine. Arjuna is overwhelmed with grief and paralyzing confusion over his duty. Krishna does not offer comfort or evasion. Instead, he delivers a profound, concise teaching on the nature of action, karma, reality, Brahman, and the various paths of yoga. The Gita thus provides the practical framework, the application of the Upanishadic wisdom for living a spiritual life in the midst of worldly activity. The Gita reveals the order that governs the cosmos and holds it up as the model for how a human life must be lived. The cosmic duty. The ultimate message of the Gita is this: we must act not for the outcome, but because action is inherent to our nature. This truth can be seen even in deep time. Consider the stromatolites. For 2.5 billion years, these simple microbial mats existed without self-consciousness, ego, or purpose. They simply performed their function, releasing oxygen as a byproduct of existence. They did not think about meaning, yet their tireless unconscious act of swadharma fundamentally changed the atmosphere and made complex life, including humanity, possible. If a simple, unthinking organism can perform its swadharma with cosmic implications, how much more vital is the duty of a human? The human form is the rarest achievement of evolution, granted the unique power of consciousness and choice. Our lives are short, and we cannot possibly know the distant, profound implications of our simple duty. The highest duty is to perform our part, to act from our deepest nature without attachment or knowledge of the result, trusting that the cosmos will take care of the rest. This engagement with duty itself is the source of liberation and joy. It is a gift of self-alignment, an end to the internal struggle between action and desire. The act of writing this book is my swadharma, an action done because it must be done. To the seeker reading this, may you find the one within and the profound joy of living in your own truth.
Chapter 1. Who is a Hindu? For a long time, I resisted calling myself a Hindu. You see, a Hindu is simply someone who dwells in the land of Hindustan, the land beyond the river Indus, Sindhu. The people who lived there never called themselves Hindus. They called themselves Bharatiya, or identified by the name of their local kingdom or community. Indeed, for them, this land was Bharatavarsha, the cherished realm defined not by borders but by the pursuit of dharma and moksha. The word Hindu was given by outsiders, Persians and later Greeks, to describe the people living east of the Indus River. That was why I hesitated to identify as one. The term felt foreign, imposed from the outside. But over time, I realized that this very resistance went against the essence of the philosophy that Hindus themselves have always lived by. I did not want to be identified separately from them, because we are not. And so, I embraced the term Hindu. Historically, Hindu referred not to a religion, but to a civilization. In modern times, the word has come to represent the native spiritual and devotional traditions of that land. Today, there are people of the land who follow Islam or Christianity and do not identify as Hindus, because over time the term has become associated specifically with the indigenous philosophies of the subcontinent. So, what is the religion of Hindustan? Unlike traditions defined by a single prophet, book, or belief, the philosophies of this land hold a startling openness. Are Hindus monotheists? Yes. Are Hindus polytheists? Yes. Are Hindus atheists? Yes, this is because Hinduism recognizes that the infinite truth is too vast to be captured by a single name or form. Whether you worship one, many, or none, you are engaging with different aspects of the same reality. If Christianity and Islam are each distinct religions, then Hinduism is not one religion but an umbrella of hundreds, even thousands of paths. Each represents a different expression of the same eternal quest for truth. This vast umbrella is called Sanatan Dharma, the eternal law of nature. It is not bound by one book, one prophet, or one ritual. It is the timeless principle that sustains life and the cosmos. It is the law that invites us to live in harmony with truth and with nature. Now the question arises, is one a Hindu only by birth? Can one convert? Socially, communities may create rituals for formal entry. But philosophically, the answer is both yes and no. You cannot convert to a law of nature. You can only align yourself with it. Gravity does not ask for contracts. You are already held by its pull. In the same way, one does not truly convert into Hinduism, because Sanatan Dharma already governs all beings. Every soul, regardless of birthplace or belief, moves within this same universal order. One does not become Hindu through ritual or declaration. One simply awakens to the truth that has always been quietly shaping one's life.
Chapter 2. Dharma, the law that holds. The Sanskrit word dharma is often translated as religion, but this is a limiting definition. In Hinduism, dharma is not a universal rule book described in a scripture for everyone to follow. Dharma is personal. Dharma comes from the root dhru, to hold, to sustain. Thus, dharma literally means that which holds everything together. It is the solid ground upon which life stands, the principle that maintains harmony in both nature and society. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that dharma is not a single rule for all, but a living principle that varies with one's nature and circumstance. Take, for example, a man who is at once a son, a husband, a father, a king, and a kshatriya, a warrior. Each of these roles carries its own responsibilities and codes of conduct. His dharma as a son is obedience, as a father, protection, as a king, justice, and as a warrior, valor. The sum of these duties, rightly balanced and performed in harmony, constitutes his personal dharma. In that sense, dharma is deeply personal, shaped by one's role, temperament, guna, and stage of life. This unique individual duty, determined by one's nature and position, is known as swadharma, one's own essential duty or path. Yet, dharma is also universal, because the fulfillment of each person's dharma contributes to the balance of the whole. When every being lives in accordance with their true nature, the cosmos remains in order. To live one's dharma is to live authentically, as a conscious part of the whole. It is the alignment of our soul's purpose with the cosmic pulse, ensuring not only societal order, but inner peace. Krishna underlines the cosmic necessity of action. Even the maintenance of your body cannot be accomplished without action. Bhagavad Gita 3.8. When dharma is neglected, disorder, adharma arises, and the harmony of the world is disturbed. It is better to do your own duty badly than to perfectly do another's. You are safe from harm when you do what you should be doing. Bhagavad Gita 3.35. This is because acting against your own nature creates inner friction and disharmony, whereas acting in alignment, even imperfectly,
maintains the integrity of your soul. Thus, dharma is a personal alignment with truth, serving as the authentic foundation for all action. Chapter 3: Karma, the law of cause and effect. The word karma comes from the Sanskrit root kri, to do, to make, to perform. Thus, karma simply means action. Every thought, word, or deed we perform is a form of karma, and each act leaves an imprint on the fabric of existence. The moral quality of an action determines the nature of the karmic impression it leaves behind. When our actions are in harmony with dharma, meaning when they are aligned with truth, duty, and the greater good, they generate good karma. Such actions purify the mind and elevate the soul. When our actions go against dharma, when they arise from selfishness, greed, or ignorance, they create bad karma, which binds us more tightly to the cycle of cause and effect, samsara. Over the course of a lifetime, every person accumulates both good and bad karma. However, it is vital to understand that even good karma still leaves an imprint and binds the soul to the cycle of cause and effect, samsara, preventing the true liberation. The balance between the two determines the conditions and quality of one's next birth. When virtue prevails, life unfolds with greater awareness and opportunity. When wrongdoing outweighs it, the soul experiences suffering as a form of learning and correction. This brings us to the concept of reincarnation. Hindu philosophy views life as an ongoing continuum. The soul, or Atman, is immortal and takes on many forms, each life providing a new opportunity to evolve and refine its understanding of truth. Through countless births and experiences, the soul gradually learns from its actions and their consequences until it breaks free from the cycle of birth and death. When speaking of this cycle, Krishna reveals a truth that clarifies the difference between the eternal and the transient. Many births have passed for me and for you, O Arjuna. I know them all, but you know not. Bhagavad Gita 4.5. The significance of this verse is immense. Krishna, that is the Supreme Self, remembers all past births because his consciousness is eternal, unified and free from the veils of time and Maya. Arjuna, the individualized soul, forgets because his awareness is mistakenly identified to the finite current body and ego. Rebirth is thus a law of forgetting, allowing us to begin each life unburdened by the crushing memory of 1,000 past traumas, fresh to learn the lesson anew. These rewards and punishments are not decreed by an external judge. They are natural outcomes of one's own actions, the universe reflecting back the energy one has created. In its deepest sense, karma is the moral law of cause and effect that ensures balance and continuity across lifetimes, guiding every soul towards learning, growth, and eventually moksha, liberation from the cycle itself. We often think of karma as a ledger of punishment and reward, but it is not judgment, it is education. Life is not a court, it is a classroom. Every experience, pleasant or painful, exists to reveal something about who we are and what remains unlearnt in us. Karma is not the hand of a punisher, it is the echo of our own intentions gently returning to us until we learn their lesson. Seen in this slide, rebirth is not a cosmic bureaucracy of births and deaths, but the universe's quiet act of mercy. If life were a single chance, it would be cruelly short. But rebirth says, you may have faltered, but you are not finished. It gives continuity to the unfinished prayers of our soul. It turns failure into pause, not ending. The reincarnation model offers the gift of patience and justice. It views life not as a final exam, but as a continuous curriculum where lessons are repeated until learned. It appeals to those who view existence as a gradual evolution and trust in the universe's capacity for mercy.
Because life is viewed as a continuum, no genuine effort is ever wasted. In this endeavor, there is no loss or destruction, and even a little practice of this dharma protects one from harm. Bhagavad Gita 2.40. Rebirth assures the human heart that every act of love, however small, is preserved as a seed in the vastness of time, waiting to bear fruit when the soil is ready. Perhaps that is why Hindu thought never needed the threat of damnation to sustain morality. Fear may control behavior, but it cannot awaken conscience. Hope can. Hope is what makes a man rise again after a fall. Rebirth is that hope, structured as law, a promise that the universe is patient with her becoming. But karma is not fate. It does not chain us to the past. It hands us the key. The same law that once binds the unconscious liberates the aware. The moment one acts with full presence, karma ceases to be a chain. It becomes creation. A conscious act, without attachment to outcome, is no longer part of bondage. It is freedom disguised as doing. Through countless lives, the soul learns to see that love is not a commandment, it is our nature. That joy is not a pursuit, it is remembrance. We stumble, forget, and remember again until the lesson no longer needs to be taught.
Chapter 4 Moksha, Liberation. While being born into favorable circumstances is a blessing, it still binds the soul to samsara, the continuous cycle of birth and death. In the Buddhist sense, all conditioned life contains dukkha, not just pain, but impermanence, loss, and the ache of wanting things to stay as they are. Even a fortunate life is touched by sickness, aging, and death. From the perspective of the Indian spiritual traditions, the purpose of existence is liberation from this cycle. From the standpoint of karma, moksha is the state reached when no karma remains to be experienced. Every action, whether virtuous or harmful, leaves an impression that must eventually bear fruit. Until all such impressions are exhausted, the soul continues its journey through countless births, learning through both joy and suffering. When all karmic debts are settled and no residue remains, the soul becomes free from the compulsion to be reborn. To understand this more intuitively, we can return to the insight that life is a classroom. A student remains in school not as punishment, but to learn. They pass through grades, face new challenges, and tackle harder lessons. But the goal of school is not to stay there forever, it is to graduate. Moksha is that spiritual graduation. It is the moment the soul realizes it has learned the lessons of duality, of pleasure and pain, loss and gain, and no longer needs the curriculum of birth and death to evolve. It steps out of the classroom in the joy of completion. That freedom is moksha. It is not the end of experience, but the end of the bondage to experience, the awakening to the truth that the self was never truly bound. This realization dawns when consciousness rests in its own nature. When the mind is restrained by the practice of yoga, it rests in the self alone. Seeing the self through the self, the yogi is content in the self. Bhagavad Gita 6:20. Krishna deepens this vision when he tells Arjuna, "There was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor these kings, nor will there ever be a time when we shall cease to be." Bhagavad Gita 2:12. Moksha is the recognition of this unborn, undying self, the direct knowing that one's essence was never created and can never perish. However, we must not mistake moksha for a state that only comes after death. The sages teach the ideal of Jivan Mukti, liberation while living. One does not need to leave the body to be free, one only needs to leave the delusion. The Zen tradition describes a parallel moment called Satturi, a sudden flash of awakening in which the mind sees its true nature in the present moment. Both traditions point to the same truth. Freedom is not a distant destination, but a shift in perception. The liberated soul may continue to walk through the world appearing like everyone else, but their internal reality has transformed. They are like a roasted seed, retaining the form of a seed, but having passed through the fire of knowledge, it has lost its potency to sprout new karma. The Mundaka Upanishad describes this final merging with a beautiful image. As flowing rivers disappear into the sea, losing their name and form, so a wise man freed from name and form attains the divine who is greater than the great. Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.8. This is the destiny towards which every consciousness is drawn, to awaken to its own nature as timeless, boundless, and free.
Chapter 5. Nishkama Karma, Desireless Action. Let us now explore the nature of desireless action, or Nishkama Karma. Most human actions arise from some motive, the pursuit of comfort, recognition, security, or happiness. Desire gives rise to attachment, and attachment generates karma. As long as action springs from personal craving, it leaves an imprint on the mind. In the Hindu view, thought itself is a subtle form of action. It is not a fleeting thought that binds, but a desire or intention that sets the wheel of karma in motion long before the physical deed is carried out. To contemplate harm carries the same imprint as the deed, for the inner movement has already taken shape. Purity of thought is therefore inseparable from purity of action. All deeds flow from the quiet workshop of intention. This raises an essential question. If desire binds us, then how is one to act at all? This was precisely Arjuna's confusion on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Faced with duty, yet terrified of its consequences, he asked Krishna whether renunciation of action was the safer path. Krishna responds with clarity. The way is not to abandon action, but to abandon attachment to the fruit of action. In one of the most foundational teachings of the Gita, he says, "You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, nor be attached to inaction." Bhagavad Gita 2.47. This is not a denial of reward, but a release from anxiety. We control the effort, the input, but the universe controls the result, the output. Accepting this mathematical reality frees the mind to focus entirely on the task at hand. To show Arjuna the meaning of selfless duty, Krishna points to his own example. Though the divine has nothing to gain, he acts tirelessly for the welfare of the world. There is no work prescribed for me, nor anything I need to gain in the three worlds, yet I engage in tireless action. Bhagavad Gita 3.22. For if I cease to act, these worlds would fall into ruin. Bhagavad Gita 3.24. Krishna then reveals the inner principle behind all selfless actions. Every action must be offered as a yajna, a sacred offering to the divine. The world is bound by action except when it is done as a sacrifice. Therefore, act as a sacred offering free from attachment. Bhagavad Gita 3.9. When you dedicate your work to God, you cease to act as an isolated individual. The ego, the sense of I am the doer, loosens its grip. The action continues, but the inner claimant disappears. Work performed in this spirit leaves no karmic residue, for it no longer arises from personal grasping, but from surrender to a larger harmony. The Buddha expressed the same insight in the Diamond Sutra. True charity, he taught, is possible only when the mind does not abide in the act. If one gives while thinking, I am being generous, the ego remains subtly preserved. But when action flows spontaneously, without clinging to the idea of a giver, a recipient, or even an act,
it becomes pure. Krishna and the Buddha point towards the same truth, that action binds us only when we insist on owning it. This state of being in the world while remaining untouched by it is beautifully conveyed in the Gita through the image of a lotus leaf. The lotus grows in muddy water, yet remains unstained. Droplets rest upon its surface, but never wet it. In the same way, the Nishkama Karma Yogi moves through life, working, loving, and striving, yet remains inwardly free from the mud of attachment. He who acts without attachment, devoting his actions to Brahman, is untouched by sin, just as a lotus leaf is untouched by water. Bhagavad Gita 5.10. This is the heart of Nishkama Karma. It is not withdrawal from action, nor dull resignation, nor fatalism. It is full participation in the world with an inward freedom that no outcome can disturb. When your work becomes worship, every deed becomes a prayer. When there is no longer a doer behind the doing, action becomes as natural as breath, simple, spontaneous, luminous. Such action does not accumulate karma, it dissolves it. Such action does not harden the ego, it melts it. Such action does not bind, it liberates. This is desireless action. To act with all your strength, all your clarity, all your love, yet offer the results into the vastness of God. When the heart reaches this simplicity, work becomes sacred, duty becomes devotion, and life itself becomes an unbroken yajna.
Chapter 6 Brahman, the ultimate reality. With the foundation of duty and action established, we are ready to explore the nature of divinity itself. Behind the play of karma stands Brahman, the divine consciousness that pervades the universe. Brahman is not a distant ruler or a watchful judge, but the living awareness within all beings, the intelligence that breathes through every form. It is not a being inside space and time, but the very consciousness through which space and time arise. Everything that moves, breathes, or acts does so through the power of Brahman. The nature of this reality is so vast that the mind cannot contain it. Alan Watts, the philosopher who bridged Eastern and Western thought, captured this difficulty well. The whole point of the Brahman idea is missed when you form any image of it in your mind. Thought and imagination are annihilated in trying to grasp this reality. Just as water cannot rise higher than its own level, thought cannot think what is higher than thinking. A finger that struggles to touch its own tip finds only the empty air. How can thought and imagination grasp Brahman when Brahman is the very screen upon which thinking and imagining take place? The seers of the Rig Veda express this mystery in the Nasadiya Sukta, the hymn of creation. Standing at the edge of the known, they gazed into the origin of the universe and saw only a profound, sacred mystery. Then was neither non-existence nor existence. There was no realm of air nor sky beyond it. What covered it, and where? And what gave shelter? Was water there? Unfathomed depth of water? Rig Veda 10:129. And in the final verse, they confessed in awe. Whence this creation has arisen, perhaps it formed itself, or perhaps it did not. The one who looks down on it, in the highest heaven, only he knows, or perhaps even he knows not. This hymn is one of the most remarkable passages in spiritual history. It places the origin of the universe before the gods themselves, suggesting that even the deities are products of creation, not its absolute source. It dared to suggest that the ultimate truth cannot be captured by the intellect, nor owned by any deity. It stands as a testament to the supreme honesty of the Vedic sages. They did not offer a comfortable dogma, but an invitation to step into the mystery.
Even the ancient sages recognized that the origin of existence lies beyond human conceptualization. For how can the instrument of knowing fully know itself? As Alan Watts observed, the knife does not cut itself, the finger does not touch itself, the mind does not know itself, the eye does not see itself. Yet, while the mind cannot grasp Brahman, the heart can recognize it as the source of all connection. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna offers a beautiful image to help us visualize this invisible unity. There is nothing higher than me, O Arjuna. All of creation is strung on me like pearls on a thread. Bhagavad Gita 7:7. Just as the thread remains hidden while holding the pearls together, Brahman remains invisible while sustaining every form in the universe. The Mundaka Upanishad expands on this by explaining that the universe is not just supported by the divine, but made of the divine. As a spider spins its web from within itself and draws it back in, as herbs grow from the earth, and as hair grows from a living body, so does the universe arise from the imperishable. Mundaka Upanishad 1:1-7. This implies a radical intimacy. The universe is not a machine built by a distant architect. It is the very body of the divine. The Upanishads describe Brahman not as an object to be seen, but as Sat, Chit, Ananda. Sat is absolute existence, the isness in all things. Chit is pure consciousness, the light that knows. Ananda is infinite bliss, the fullness that lacks nothing. It is the silent witness of all action and the source from which every law of nature emanates. Just as waves rise and fall upon the ocean without disturbing its depth, all experiences unfold within Brahman without altering its stillness. Brahman is the ultimate and only reality. Everything we perceive through our senses, the world of forms, names and change, is Maya, the veil of appearance. In the next chapter, we will explore this mystery of Maya and how it obscures the eternal truth of Brahman behind the illusion of multiplicity.
Chapter 7. Maya, the veil of illusion. If Brahman is the ultimate and only reality, then why do we experience a world of multiplicity and change? Why does the eternal appear as transient, the infinite as finite, and the one as many? The ancient seers answered with a single mysterious word: Maya. Maya is not illusion in the sense of something unreal, but illusion in the sense of something misperceived. The world is real as appearance, but not real in essence. What we call the world exists only so long as we view it through the filter of our senses and the limitations of the mind. Each being experiences a different world. A bee sees ultraviolet patterns in flowers invisible to the human eye. A bat crafts a landscape out of echoes. A dog inhabits a universe of scent. Even among humans, perception is shaped by memory, fear, desire, and conditioning. No two people inhabit the same inner world. Maya veils all beings, but only humans can recognize the veil and ask what lies beyond it. This capacity makes human birth sacred. Only here can the mind question itself and seek the truth hidden behind appearances. The Bhagavad Gita echoes this truth, illustrating how Maya serves as a barrier between the divine and the individual soul, while also offering a path to transcendence. All beings are deluded by the three gunas of Maya. Because of this delusion, they do not know me, the supreme and imperishable. Bhagavad Gita 7:13. And again, I am not revealed to everyone, for I am veiled by my divine Maya. Bhagavad Gita 7,
25. Yet Krishna does not leave Arjuna helpless. He reveals the way through. This divine energy of mind made of the three gunas is difficult to overcome. But those who take refuge in me cross beyond it. Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Imagine a rope lying in dim light. A passerby mistakes it for a snake and recoils in fear. The fear is real, but the snake is not. When light reveals the rope as rope, nothing is destroyed, only the misperception falls away. So it is with the world. Maya makes the one appear as many. Through ignorance or avidya, we project separateness onto what is indivisible. Yet behind every shifting pattern, the substratum of Brahman remains unchanged. A closer analogy comes from dreams. In sleep, the mind creates cities, oceans, people, and dangers. A tiger in a dream can make the heart race. The experience is real, but the substance is not. Upon waking, we realize the tiger, the chase, and even the dream self were all projections of our own consciousness. Likewise, Brahman is the dreamer and the universe is the dream. Awakening does not erase the world, it reveals the dreamer and the dream as one. The Shvetashvatar Upanishad captures this mystery simply. Know then that nature is Maya, and the Lord of Maya is the great Lord Himself. Maya is the divine's creative power, its capacity to manifest multiplicity without ever becoming divided. It is the cosmic artistry that makes the one appear as many, so that the drama of existence may unfold. Why would the infinite express itself at all? The Upanishads do not give a single final answer, but many seers across time have offered doorways to contemplate this. Alan Watts, drawing from Vedanta, said that if pure consciousness is infinite, undivided, and without contrast, then it cannot experience itself unless it plays with form. In this view, Brahman becomes the universe out of overflowing potential, creativity, and joy. This divine play is known as Leela. Some sages describe it through Swabhava or natural expression. Just as the sun shines because shining is its nature, and fire burns because burning is its nature, consciousness may express itself because expression is its nature. This lens helps illuminate Krishna's enigmatic statement in the Gita. There is nothing in the three worlds that I need to attain, and yet I engage in tireless action. Bhagavad Gita 3:22. This act of creation, born not of need but of fullness, is the archetype of perfect action. It is the root example for all mankind. When Krishna tells Arjuna that he engages in tireless action, he is presenting the divine not just as a static witness, but as the supreme worker. His action is pure because it flows directly from his nature, free from the friction of ego or desire. If the Creator acts simply because it is his Swabhava, then the individual too finds freedom by acting in accordance with their Swadharma, their own deepest nature, not from ego, not from fear, not for reward, but because the action is true. This is the heart of spiritual life, not to destroy Maya, but to understand it. When the light of awareness dawns, Maya becomes transparent. The world remains as it is, but the perception transforms. Duality softens. The divine shines through every form, and the seeker sees unity everywhere. The Mundaka Upanishad says, when everything has become the self, what delusion, what sorrow can remain? Maya is not an enemy, it is a veil and a mirror. It hides the infinite and yet it reveals it. It is the playground of the divine and the pathway back to the divine. When the veil thins, the seeker realizes that what once appeared as illusion was all along the divine itself at play.
Chapter 8 Prakriti, the creative power. While Brahman is the unchanging reality, Prakriti is the changing world that arises from it. Prakriti is the divine's creative power. It is the cosmic womb from which the entire universe emerges. Everything we call nature, from subatomic particles to vast galaxies, from the changing seasons to the workings of the human mind, is an expression of her ceaseless movement. To the Hindu sages, Prakriti is not inanimate or mechanical, but living intelligence, the dynamic, ever unfolding aspect of Brahman that gives birth to form. Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita, Prakriti is my womb, in it I place the seed. From this union, O Arjuna, all beings are born. Bhagavad Gita 14.3. Brahman is the ultimate reality, and Prakriti is his motion. Without Prakriti, there is no creation. Without Brahman, there is no existence. One may wonder, what is the difference between Prakriti and Maya? They both seem to describe the world of appearances. The two concepts are related, but not identical. Prakriti is the material and psychological field itself, nature, matter, energy, mind, and the three gunas. It is the actual stuff from which the universe is formed. Maya, on the other hand, is the power that makes Prakriti appear separate from Brahman. Prakriti is the movie playing on the screen. Maya is the spell that makes you forget you're watching a movie. Prakriti is the manifestation, while Maya is the misperception. The universe arises from Prakriti, but our sense of separateness, fragmentation, and duality arises from Maya. If Maya were removed, Prakriti would not disappear into a void, rather, it would shine as the dynamic body of God. We would see the universe not as a collection of dead objects, but as a single living radiance. The waves would still rise and fall, but we would see only the ocean. Understanding this distinction helps clarify the path. The seeker does not reject nature or Prakriti, but seeks to see it without the distortions of Maya. Prakriti expresses herself through three fundamental qualities called gunas, a word that translates to strands or ropes. These are the forces that bind consciousness to matter. Sattva, balance and clarity; Rajas, activity and passion; Tamas, inertia and decay. The Bhagavad Gita explains their binding nature. Material nature consists of the three modes: Sattva, goodness; Rajas, passion; and Tamas, ignorance. When the eternal self comes in contact with nature, O Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. Bhagavad Gita 14.5. Every aspect of existence is woven from these three strands in differing proportions. When Sattva dominates, there is harmony, wisdom, and peace. When Rajas prevails, there is restlessness, desire, and constant movement. When Tamas takes over, there is confusion, ignorance, and decay. But even Sattva is a binding force. If Tamas is an iron chain and Rajas is a copper chain, then Sattva is a golden chain. The iron chain binds through lethargy. The golden chain binds through the subtle ego that says, I am wise, I am good, I am superior. As long as there is an I claiming the goodness, the soul remains bound. To be truly free, one must eventually transcend all the three modes and rest in the self alone. Just as light passing through a prism splits into colors, Brahman's pure consciousness passing through Prakriti becomes the diversity of the world, shaped and tinted by the interplay of these three gunas. However, the most profound insight regarding Prakriti is the realization of non-doership. We often believe that we are thinking, feeling, or acting, but the sages teach that these movements belong to nature, not the self. The body hungers, the mind thinks, the emotions surge.
This is the machinery of Prakriti at work. The self is merely the witness. Krishna clarifies this vital distinction. All actions are performed by the gunas of material nature, but a man deluded by ego thinks I am the doer. Bhagavad Gita 3.27. Liberation comes when we realize we are not the machine but the consciousness observing it. In devotional traditions, Prakriti is personified as Devi, the Divine Mother, appearing as Durga, Parvati, Lakshmi or Saraswati. She nourishes, protects and destroys. She is the endless cycle of creation and dissolution. To honor her is to honor the sacredness of all life. The wise do not reject Prakriti, they revere her. For even illusion and matter, when seen rightly, are expressions of the same divinity that dwells within. Prakriti is the living face of Brahman. Through her, the eternal becomes visible. Through her, the invisible learns to see itself. When the veil of Maya lifts, we do not stop seeing the world. Instead, we recognize that Prakriti and Brahman are one. Just as a gold ornament is nothing but gold, the form remains, but the realization shifts. With such a shift, Maya dissolves, Dharma awakens, and the silent witness within smiles, for creation, it realizes, was never separate from the Creator.
Chapter 9. Purusha, the silent witness. If Prakriti is the ever-moving field of nature, then Purusha is the one who observes that movement. Purusha is pure awareness, untouched by the play of creation. It does not act, it does not change, and it does not evolve. It is the silent witness within every being. The sages described Purusha as the light that makes experience possible. Just as the sun does not participate in the activities it illuminates, Purusha does not participate in the actions it observes. It is the unchanging seer behind all that is seen. A natural question arises: how is Purusha different from Brahman if Brahman is the ultimate reality? The distinction lies in perspective, not substance. Brahman is the absolute, infinite, formless, and without attributes, the ground of all existence. It is consciousness in its pure, unconditioned state, beyond all manifestation. Purusha, on the other hand, is that same consciousness acting as the inner witness within each being. If Brahman is the vast sun, Purusha is the sunlight shining within each living heart. The essence is one and the same, but Purusha is Brahman manifesting as a conscious presence in the field of individual experience. Now let us consider the relationship of Purusha, Prakriti and Maya. Prakriti is Brahman manifesting as the universe, the dance of form, energy and motion. Purusha is Brahman manifesting as awareness, the perceiver of that dance. Yet both are Brahman, two faces of one infinite reality. Here enters Maya, the mysterious power that makes the two seem separate. Maya is Brahman's own veil of perception through which the observer and the observed appear divided. This apparent division allows consciousness to perceive its own reflection and to witness itself as creation. The Upanishads say that the world appears only because Purusha illuminates it. Without a witness, there is no experience. Without consciousness, there is no world. Purusha is like a mirror. It reflects everything, yet remains untouched by what it reflects. A physical mirror which is lifeless
Purusha is a conscious mirror. It knows what it reflects, yet is not stained by it. Modern science, too, is beginning to echo this ancient truth. Cutting-edge research in consciousness studies and quantum physics suggests that awareness may not arise from the physical world, but may instead be a fundamental condition for the world's appearance. The cosmos exists not merely as matter, but as information brought to life through observation. The root of human suffering lies in a simple but profound mistake. Purusha, the witness, becomes identified with Prakriti, the changing field of experience. The eternal begins to imagine itself as the transient. Thus we say, I am angry, I am afraid, I am failing, I am this body, I am this mind. Yet all these belong to Prakriti, to the movements of thought, emotion and form. Purusha has no attributes at all. It is not tall or short, young or old, good or bad, Hindu or Christian. It is beyond personality, beyond preference, and beyond all change. The Buddha saw this clearly. He taught that suffering, dukkha, arises because we cling to what is impermanent and mistake it for I and mine. The moment consciousness identifies with body, feeling or thought, it becomes bound to their constant arising and passing away. Liberation comes through seeing that none of these are the self. As the Buddha said, this is not mine, this is not I, and this is not myself. To recognize oneself as the witness of all experience, not its owner, is to awaken from the dream of suffering. The Upanishads call this realization Atmajnana, knowledge of the self. The Buddha called it Nirvana, the cooling of the fire of grasping. Both point to the same truth. When Purusha ceases to identify with Prakriti, what remains is freedom, peace and pure awareness. The Mundaka Upanishad illustrates this relationship with a famous and beautiful allegory. Two birds, inseparable companions, perch on the same tree. One eats the fruit, tasting its sweetness and bitterness. The other simply watches, tasting nothing. Mundaka Upanishad 3.1.1. The bird that eats is the individual ego, Jiva, experiencing the pleasures and pains of the world, Prakriti. The bird that watches is Purusha, the silent witness, ever content and free. Suffering begins when we forget we are the watcher and believe we are the eater. Freedom is simply the shift in attention from the bird that hungers to the bird that sees.
Chapter 10 Avidya, the Veil of Ignorance. If Maya is the power that veils Brahman at the cosmic level, then Avidya is that same veil operating within the individual. Maya makes the one appear as many, while Avidya makes the self appear as separate from the whole. Through Avidya, Purusha, the witnessing consciousness, forgets its true identity as Brahman and becomes entangled in its own reflection within Prakriti. The infinite begins to believe itself to be finite. Avidya is not a lack of information, but a fundamental misperception of reality. It is the mistaken belief that I am the body, I am this mind, or I am this personality. This false identification is the root of bondage and suffering. The moment the witness identifies with the movements of Prakriti, the dream of individuality begins. From this misidentification arises a false center of identity known as Ahankara, the ego. The ego is not evil. It is the sense of I that consciousness constructs to navigate the world. But when this I becomes absolute and we mistake it for the self, suffering begins. The ego clings, fears, and competes because it sees itself as separate from everything else. In many traditions, the human condition is described as fallen or sinful. In Hinduism, we are not sinners. We are merely mistaken. We have forgotten who we are. The cure, therefore, is not punishment, but memory. Maya and avidya are often confused. The difference can be understood through simple examples. Maya is the magician performing the show. Avidya is the child in the audience who believes the magic is real. The Buddha described a similar delusion. He taught that the root of suffering lies in avidya, ignorance, and the inability to see things as they truly are. When he attained enlightenment, he famously declared that he had found the architect of his suffering, the craving and ignorance that built the house of the ego. O house builder, you are seen. You will not build this house again. All your rafters are broken, the rich pole is destroyed, my mind has reached the unconditioned. In this profound verse, the house builder is avidya. Once the ignorance is seen, it loses its power to construct the illusion of a separate self. The Upanishads teach that avidya is dissolved through knowledge or jnana. Ignorance has no independent existence. It persists only as long as truth is unseen. The moment the light of awareness arises, avidya vanishes like darkness before sunrise. Krishna describes this illuminating power of knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita. But for those whose ignorance is destroyed by the knowledge of the self, that knowledge reveals the Supreme, just as the sun lights up the world. Bhagavad Gita 5.16. Ignorance is the fuel that keeps the wheel of karma turning. When true knowledge dawns, that fuel is exhausted and the wheel gradually comes to rest in stillness. Only then can action become pure, free from desire and attachment. To see through avidya does not require the acquisition of new beliefs, but the undoing of false assumptions. The sages call this process viveka, the discrimination between the real and the unreal, the eternal and the transient, the self and the non-self. When discrimination matures into direct seeing, avidya dissolves naturally. The seeker realizes, not through reasoning, but through insight, that the self was never bound, only mistaken. Liberation or moksha is not the gaining of something new, but the removal of what was never true. The Mundaka Upanishad describes this awakening beautifully. When that self is realized, the knots of the heart are loosened, all doubts are cut asunder, and the fruits of karma perish. When knowledge arises, ignorance gives way to knowing, and knowing gives way to being. The dreamer awakens, and the dream continues only as a reflection of joy, no longer as bondage. In that awakening, one recognizes what was always true. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that.
Chapter 11. Atman, the Self. Previously we explored Purusha, the pure witness, the unchanging awareness distinct from Prakriti, the field of matter and mind. The realization of Purusha frees one from identification with the body, thoughts and emotions. But this is only the first step. To see oneself as the witness is to awaken from the dream. To know oneself as Atman is to realize that the dream, the dreamer and the light of awareness are all one. The ancient sages did not arrive at this understanding through speculation or belief. They discovered it through direct experience. By withdrawing the senses, stilling the mind and observing awareness itself, they found that behind every thought and emotion, there is a silent witness. When the mind dissolved completely, this witness shone alone, unchanged, boundless, and free. Different sages across centuries and regions reported the same inner reality. Their testimony forms the basis of the Upanishads. This is why Hindu philosophy insists that truth is not something to be believed, but something to be realized within. In the language of Yoga and Sankhya, the goal is Kaivalya, liberation through detachment where consciousness stands apart from nature. In the language of the Upanishads, the same goal is moksha, liberation through unity, where the self realizes it was never separate from the whole. In the language of the Buddha, the goal is nirvana, liberation through the cooling of the fires of craving and illusion, where the mind becomes still and rests in unconditioned peace. One may ask, what is the difference between Purusha and Atman? If Purusha says, I am not this world, Atman says, there is no world apart from me. The Upanishads clearly declare that Atman and Brahman are the same. The Isha Upanishad expresses this truth beautifully. That is full, this is full. From fullness, fullness comes. When fullness is taken from fullness, fullness still remains. If Brahman is the infinite unchanging reality, why introduce another term, Atman, at all? The answer lies not in philosophy but in experience. The infinite cannot be grasped directly by the finite mind. The sages began where every seeker begins with the question, who am I? They turned inward, peeling away the layers of body, mind and memory, until what remained was pure awareness. That awareness, untouched by birth or death, they called Atman. To help understand this, the sages used the analogy of a clay jar. Inside the jar there is space. Outside the jar there is space. We give them different names, jar space and total space, and they appear separate because of the clay walls. But if the jar breaks, the space inside merges instantly with the space outside. It was never truly separate. In the same way, Atman is the space within the individual form and Brahman is the space everywhere. The form creates the illusion of separation, but the essence is one. The search for truth begins as it did for Shvetaketu, with the question, who am I? At first, the mind identifies itself with name and form, a person, a body, a personal story. The teacher then points to the essence behind every appearance. Just as by knowing one lump of clay, all things made of clay become known, the modification being only a name arising from speech, while the truth is that all is clay. Just as a gold necklace is not different from gold, the self is not different from the reality that shines through it. When one looks closely, the necklace loses its separateness and becomes simply gold in another shape. That which is the subtle essence, this whole world has that as itself. That is the true, that is the self, that thou art, Tattvamasi, Shvetaketu. The seeker who begins by knowing the self as a name ends by knowing all names and forms as one essence. This is the meaning of Tat Tvam Asi. This thought is beautifully expressed in the Bhagavad Gita. Brahman is the offering, Brahman is the offered. Into the fire of Brahman, he who sees Brahman in every action attains Brahman alone. When the truth of self dawns, a person no longer sees God as distant, hidden in heaven, but as the very breath, pulse and presence of all life. To harm another becomes unthinkable, for there is no other. Love ceases to be an emotion and becomes the natural state of existence. The Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad says, when there is duality, one sees another, one hears another, one speaks to another. But when everything has become the self, what should one see and through what? This realization does not lead to withdrawal, but to profound engagement. The enlightened one still walks among people, works, loves, and serves, but without the burden of separation. There is no pride in good deeds and no guilt in mistakes, for both belong to the play of Prakriti, not to the self, because nothing clings to the self. The Bhagavad Gita describes such a person beautifully. He who sees the same self in all beings and all beings in the self never turns away from it. Bhagavad Gita 6.29. Such a being acts in the world with effortless compassion. Their joy does not depend on outcome or circumstance, for it arises from the unshakable peace of knowing who they are. To know Atman is to know one's own essence. In this realization, birth and death lose their sting, for what is born and dies is only form, while the self is eternal. The Bhagavad Gita expresses this idea beautifully. The self is never born, nor does it die. Having once existed, it never ceases to be. Unborn, eternal, ever existing and ancient, it is not slain when the body is slain. Just as a man casts off worn-out garments and puts on new ones, so the embodied soul casts off old bodies and takes on new ones. This is the highest knowledge, Atma Jnana, which ends all seeking. The wave recognizes itself as the ocean. The search ends where it began, in the infinite self, forever whole.
Chapter 12. Om, the sound of the Absolute. Among all symbols in Hindu thought, the most visible and mysterious is Om. Sages called it the first vibration, the seed from which the universe itself unfolded. Yet, Om is not merely a sound, it is the living expression of Brahman. It is consciousness made audible. In deep meditation, the ancient sages perceived a subtle spanda, a divine pulse, a vibration arising from the infinite stillness of Brahman. This was the first movement of consciousness, not in space or time, but within awareness itself. That pulse was Om. The sages did not invent Om, they heard it. In the stillness of meditation, when the mind grew silent and the senses withdrew, this vibration revealed itself as the background hum of existence, the eternal note that underlies all forms and phenomena. It was called Nada Brahman, the sound aspect of the divine. The Maitreya Upanishad describes this. One should meditate upon the sound Om, for it is the supreme Brahman. Having controlled the senses and the mind, one hears the sound that is uncaused and eternal. Maitreya Upanishad 6.22. When the sages called Om the first vibration, they did not mean it occurred at some point in history. The first here refers to the eternal beginning, the ever-present threshold where awareness begins to perceive itself. In their direct experience, this was not an event in time, but a timeless arising, the moment that is always now. They experienced it as the living heartbeat of the cosmos, the continuous unfolding of being from silence. But how can Brahman, the formless, become sound? Sages called Om Brahman's first self-reflection. It is the point where the unmanifest touches the manifest. This is why Om can be spoken, heard and experienced, yet what it reveals is beyond sound altogether. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explicitly identifies himself with this primordial sound, bridging the gap between the abstract and the personal. I am the taste in water, O son of Kunti. I am the light of the sun and the moon. I am the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. Bhagavad Gita 7.8. The Mandukya Upanishad, one of the most shortest yet the most profound of all Upanishads, explains the connection of Om with consciousness. It teaches that Om consists of three vibrations, A, U and M, followed by a profound silence. A represents the waking state, where consciousness identifies with the body and the outer world.
U represents the dream state, where the mind creates its own inner world. M represents deep sleep, where both are dissolved in unmanifest stillness. Beyond these three is the silence that follows, the Turiya, the fourth, which is the background of all three. It is pure consciousness itself. Thus, the sound and the silence of Om together symbolize the entire spectrum of consciousness, from the finite to the infinite. It further declares, Om is all this, past, present and future. Whatever was, whatever is, whatever will be, is Om. And beyond time too is Om. Thus, Om is both within Maya and beyond it. It is the reminder that even illusion arises from truth, and that the world we perceive, though transient and ever-changing, arises from the eternal. Hindu sages discovered Om to be the key that unlocks the veil of Maya. When chanted with awareness, it becomes a bridge between sound and silence, between form and formlessness. The sound of Om belongs to the realm of Maya, but the silence that follows reveals Brahman. The Mundaka Upanishad beautifully declares, Om is the bow, the self is the arrow, and Brahman is the target. One should be absorbed in it as an arrow becomes one with the target. Mundaka Upanishad 2.2.4. Thus, Om is not the goal but the doorway, a sacred resonance that helps consciousness remember itself. The sages taught that Om should never be chanted mechanically, but with deep awareness. They prescribed a simple yet profound method. Sit with a straight spine, let the breath settle, and bring your attention to the heart. Begin with a gentle exhalation. The sound arises from the base of the throat, expanding through the chest. U rolls forward along the palate, vibrating in the mouth. M closes softly at the lips, resonating through the skull. Let the vibration fade into silence and rest in that stillness, the space where sound dissolves into its source. This silence is not merely the end of the chant. It is the background against which the chant appeared. The silence was there before the during the U, and remains after the M. As Swami Vivekananda said, the moment you truly listen to the silence after Om, you are touching the infinite. The sages did not invent the story of Om. They discovered an experience and then clothed it in language. In deep meditation, when the mind became still, they heard a subtle vibration arising from silence, the living hum of consciousness itself. To convey this realization, they spoke of it as the first sound, the seed of creation. The narrative was never meant as literal cosmology, but as a poetic bridge helping seekers understand what cannot be described. That all sound, all motion and all existence emerge from the same eternal stillness. It is not necessary to understand the mythos behind Om to be liberated. For the sages did not want us merely to believe in Om, but to realize it, and only then to understand it. Om is therefore a sacred tool, not an obligation. The sages never declared it the only way to realization, but one of many doorways. Each path suits a different temperament. Some approach through devotion, others through inquiry, meditation, or service. The ultimate goal of every path is the same: realization of truth.
Chapter 13. Yoga, the Path to Union. Having journeyed through the understanding of Atman, the inner self, and Om, the vibration of the infinite, we now turn toward Yoga, the living bridge between knowledge and realization. If Brahmanagnana reveals the truth, Yoga allows one to become that truth. It is the process through which the separation between the knower, the known, and the knowing dissolves into unity. The word yoga comes from the Sanskrit root yuj, to yoke or to unite. At its core, yoga is the union of the individual consciousness, with the universal consciousness, the harmony of body, mind, and spirit. It is both a philosophy and a discipline, a science of stillness and a way of life. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna declares, yoga is skill in action and equanimity of mind. It is not escape from the world, but mastery within it. However, it is equally important to understand what yoga is not. In the modern world, particularly in the West, the word yoga has become synonymous with physical postures and stretching. This limited view, known as Hatha Yoga, is only one small aspect of a much greater path. The true yoga of the sages is not about flexibility of the body, but about flexibility of the mind. As the ancient texts remind us, the posture serves only to steady the body so that the mind may become still. Without inner awareness, movement alone remains exercise, not yoga. The sages saw that the restless mind, driven by desire and aversion, is what maintains the illusion of separation. The purpose of yoga is to quieten this turbulence so that the light of awareness may reflect clearly, like a still lake mirroring the sky. The sage Patanjali defined this goal with surgical precision in the Yoga Sutras. Yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. Yoga Sutras 1.2. When the waves of thought subside, the self is seen as it truly is, luminous, free, and whole. There are many paths of yoga, each suited to different temperaments, yet all leading to the same destination. The four principal paths described in the scriptures are: 1. Karma Yoga, the path of selfless action, the practice of acting without attachment to results. It purifies the heart by transforming work into worship. 2. Bhakti Yoga, the path of devotion, the way of love and surrender. It channels emotion into divine longing, transforming the heart until no separation remains between the lover and the beloved. 3. Jnana Yoga, the path of inquiry and discernment. By asking, "Who am I?" and distinguishing the real from the unreal, one removes ignorance and recognizes the self as pure consciousness. 4. Raj Yoga, the royal path that disciplines the body and mind through ethical living, breath control, concentration, and meditation, culminating in Samadhi, the state of complete absorption. Even in other traditions, echoes of this truth can be found. When Jesus said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light," he used the same metaphor. The English word yoke and the Sanskrit yuj share the same Indo-European root. His statement expresses the essence of yoga, that union with the divine is not a strain, but a release, not an effort, but surrender. The ultimate goal of yoga is not to become something new, but to realize what has always been. As the Katha Upanishad says, when the five senses are stilled, when the mind is at rest, when the intellect wavers not, then is the highest state attained. In that stillness, the seeker and the sought are one, and the journey returns to where it began, the infinite peace of Brahman. Chapter 14, Karma Yoga, the path of action. Most spiritual texts begin in forests, some in caves, some in quiet hermitages where disciples gather around a serene teacher. But the Bhagavad Gita begins on a battlefield. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Arjuna, the warrior prince, stands trembling. His limbs lose strength. His bow slips from his hand. The same Arjuna, who once stood fearlessly against demons and kings, now refuses to fight. What has changed is his heart. He sees teachers who once taught him, cousins who once played with him, elders he once bowed to, arrayed against him in the battlefield. To lift a weapon against them feels like the ultimate violation of dharma.
His voice shakes when he tells Krishna, his friend, charioteer, and teacher, I will not fight. Arjuna is not refusing out of cowardice but out of misplaced compassion and confusion. He wishes to renounce his role without understanding the nature of renunciation. It is here in the moment of collapse that Krishna begins to teach Arjuna the path of Karma Yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna the nature of action. Not by abstaining from action does a person attain freedom from action, nor by mere renunciation does he reach perfection. Bhagavad Gita 3.4. No one can even for a moment remain without acting. All beings are driven to action by the gunas of Prakriti. Bhagavad Gita 3.5. Krishna further instructs Arjuna to act while renouncing the fruits of his actions. The wise man lets go of all results, whether good or bad, and is focused on the action alone. Yoga is skill in actions. Bhagavad Gita 2.50. Arjuna then voices a profound question that every seeker eventually asks. If I must renounce the fruit of action, what will move me to act at all? Krishna answers by lifting the entire discussion out of the realm of personal motivation and into the realm of the sacred. Action, he says, is not to be performed for desire, ambition, or fear, but as yajna, a sacred offering to the divine. Work must be done as a sacrifice to the Supreme. Bhagavad Gita 3.9. The essence of Karma Yoga lies in this shift from doership to instrumentality. When one acts from the ego, every effort is driven by desire or fear. The desire for success, the fear of failure, the craving for recognition, or the avoidance of blame. But when one acts as a channel for the divine will, every action becomes sacred. The focus moves from what will I gain to what is my swadharma. This inner transformation purifies the heart and looses the grip of the ego. Krishna instructs Arjuna, it is better to do your own duty badly than to perfectly do another's. You are safe from harm when you do what you should be doing. Bhagavad Gita 3.35. Non-attachment, nishkama karma, does not mean indifference or passivity. It means full engagement without bondage. Anxiety about the future drains energy from the present. When you stop worrying about the result, you don't care less. You actually have more energy to focus on the work itself. The Karma Yogi is often the most efficient worker in the room because their mind is single-pointed. Krishna points to the ancient King Janaka as the ideal example. Although he was a powerful ruler with immense responsibilities, Janaka attained perfection through action alone, ruling his kingdom without being bound by it. Furthermore, Krishna explains that the wise have a responsibility to set a standard for the world. They act not for themselves but to guide others. The wise should not create a confusion in the minds of the ignorant who are attached to action. Rather, the wise person, by performing all actions with non-attachment, should inspire them to do the same. Bhagavad Gita 3.26. Arjuna's dilemma on the battlefield is the timeless human struggle between duty and emotion, action and attachment. Overwhelmed by grief and compassion, he seeks escape through inaction. He wishes to renounce his role as a warrior not out of enlightenment but out of faintness of heart. Krishna reveals that true renunciation does not mean abstaining from the world, but performing one's swadharma, one's inner duty, without self-interest. In a world obsessed with outcomes, Karma Yoga offers a radical peace. It teaches that meaning lies not in achievement but in awareness. You can live this teaching in a meeting room, a kitchen, or a battlefield. When work becomes service and service becomes love, every moment is spiritual practice. Even in other great traditions, the spirit of Karma Yoga quietly shines through. Jesus embodied this path of selfless action, dissolving the ego's claim of I am the doer and becoming a pure instrument of divine will. I can do nothing on my own. I seek not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. John 5:30. Saint Francis of Assisi expressed the same surrender in his timeless prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Zen Buddhism expresses this truth through the simplicity of complete presence. When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. It reminds us that freedom lies in wholehearted action without inner residue. Modern psychology mirrors this wisdom in Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow, where a person becomes so absorbed in a task that the ego dissolves, time disappears, and action unfolds effortlessly. Whether it is Arjuna taking up his bow, Jesus aligning with the will of the Father, Francis offering himself as a vessel of peace, a Zen monk chopping wood and carrying water, or an artist lost in the purity of creation, the underlying truth remains the same. Spirituality is not escape from action, but the transformation of action through presence and surrender until the boundary between I and the task disappears. The battlefield of Kurukshetra is not out there, it is in our minds. We are all Arjuna standing between the pull of emotion and the call of truth. At times, the roles we must play feel heavy. The responsibilities of life feel overwhelming. But to abandon them is to abandon our own evolution.
Chapter 15 Bhakti Yoga, the path of love. Among all the paths taught in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga is the one that speaks most directly to the human heart. If Karma Yoga is the path of selfless action, Bhakti Yoga is the path of selfless love. It is the movement of the soul toward the divine through devotion, surrender, and intimacy. The sages often say it is the most accessible of all spiritual paths, for love requires no scholarship or austerity. Humans are embodied beings living in a world of form and relationship. Therefore, relating to the formless absolute can be a struggle. Krishna confirms this difficulty in the Gita, explaining why the path of devotion is often preferred over the path of abstract knowledge. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifest, the path is difficult. For the embodied, the goal of the unmanifest is hard to reach. Bhagavad Gita 12.5. Bhakti bridges this gap. It is not limited to rituals, music, or prayer. Bhakti is the state in which the heart remembers its true belonging. In Bhakti, nothing is outside the realm of devotion. Every act, every breath, every longing becomes a bridge to God. Krishna defines this path with exquisite clarity. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, whatever austerity you perform, do that as an offering to me. Bhagavad Gita 9.27. Humans express love through gestures. We write letters, speak words of affection, sing songs, and offer gifts. The spiritual heart is no different. Worship is the way love expresses itself toward the divine. It is bhakti taking form, the heart finding ways to express its longing for God. Worship may arise as prayer, chanting, service, contemplation, or silence. The outer forms vary, but the inner movement is the same. Through worship, the heart turns towards something higher than itself and becomes softened and purified. Worship is not performed to flatter God. It is performed to transform ourselves. The sun does not require a lamp, yet lighting a lamp turns our attention toward the sun. In the same way, rituals do not change God, they change us. Krishna says, even a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or a little water, if offered with devotion, I accept that offering from the pure-hearted giver. Bhagavad Gita 9.26. The offering is never judged by its size, but by the love with which it is given. The Upanishads proclaim the ultimate truth as Nirguna Brahman, the formless, limitless Absolute. But most human beings cannot love an abstraction. The mind seeks relationship. The heart seeks intimacy. Hence, Hinduism introduces Saguna Brahman, the divine with attributes, the one who can be spoken to, sung to, wept before, and embraced in love. Forms of God are not limitations of God. They are invitations for the human heart. Just as water takes the shape of the vessel into which it is poured, the infinite takes the shape that resonates with each devotee. Some are drawn to Krishna as a playful child or the beloved in divine romance. Some worship the mother goddess Durga as the fierce and protective source of strength. Some seek Shiva's stillness. Some turn to Rama's righteousness. Some find the divine in Christ, in light of Nanak, or in the formless name. People have different temperaments, and they naturally gravitate toward the divine form that harmonizes with their inner nature. This form is known as the Ishta Devata, the chosen deity. This universality is one of the great strengths of bhakti. Once the divine is understood as Saguna or Sakar Brahman, the one with qualities and attributes, it becomes natural for that presence to take a concrete form in the life of the devotee. Just as a photograph helps us remember someone we love, a sacred form helps the mind focus its devotion on the divine. The heart longs for a face to adore, a presence to stand before, and a symbol to hold during prayer. From this need for relational closeness arises the use of murtis or sacred images in Hindu worship. The form is not worshipped as an object, but honored as a window through which the devotee can touch the infinite. Critics of Hinduism often ridicule idol worship, believing it to be primitive or superstitious. But the truth is that all humans create idols. Whenever you speak of God, you project the infinite into the finite. Such an idol may not be made of stone, but it is made of concepts. The mind cannot relate to formless, attributeless infinity, so it creates a name, an idea, an attribute. That mental image is as much an idol as any murti. The difference in Hinduism is that the tradition acknowledges this honestly. Instead of pretending that our mental images are somehow superior, it sanctifies the form and uses it consciously as a tool for devotion. Krishna reveals this inclusiveness in the Gita. Whichever form a devotee seeks to worship with faith, I make that faith steady. Bhagavad Gita 7.21. It is not the form that matters, it is the heart behind the form. Arguments about which form of God is superior are distractions created by the ego. What matters is the transformation of the heart. Bhakti exists for one purpose, to purify and soften us so that we can recognize the divine within ourselves. Krishna describes this inner transformation. By devotion alone can I be known as I truly am. Bhagavad Gita 18.55. Bhakti is not about choosing the correct form of God. It is about cultivating the correct heart. Swami Vivekananda said it beautifully. Love is the purifier. Love is the bridge. A heart filled with devotion cannot remain small. Although Bhakti Yoga is often associated with Hinduism, the essence of devotion is universal. Every tradition that places love at the center of spiritual life is practicing bhakti, whether by name or not. Jesus lived in a state of uninterrupted devotion. His deepest teaching echoes the same truth. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. Mark 12.30. Guru Nanak also sang this truth.
His entire life was an expression of love for the One, the divine reality present in all creation. Through his hymns, he taught that devotion cleanses the heart and reveals the presence of God in every being. Not by thinking does one find God, he is realized through loving remembrance. Japji Sahib, Pauri 1. The same current of devotion flows in the Sufi tradition, where God is approached not through fear, but through love that consumes the self. Rabia al-Adawiya, the great mystic of Basra, prayed, "If I worship you for fear of hell, burn me in hell. If I worship you in hope of paradise, exclude me from paradise. But if I worship you for your own sake, withhold not from me your eternal beauty." In these words, we hear the essence of bhakti, a love that seeks nothing but the beloved. Al-Hallaj, the ecstatic martyr of Sufism, echoed this when he said, "Your spirit mixed with mine, little by little. Now I am yourself and you are me." In this way, the path of bhakti transcends boundaries. It is not confined to ritual or culture or geography. It is the eternal movement of the soul toward its source. Bhakti Yoga teaches that the deepest longing of the human heart is for connection with the divine. This connection is not achieved by force or argument, but through love. Worship softens the ego. Prayer opens the heart. Devotion bridges the gap between the finite and the infinite. The Gita affirms this beautifully. "To those who are constantly devoted to me and who worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me." Bhagavad Gita 10.10. The forms may differ, the rituals may differ, the languages of prayer may differ, but the movement of bhakti is always the same. It is Jesus loving God with all his heart, Nanak singing the eternal name, Mirabai losing herself in Krishna's sweetness, Rabia burning with pure devotion, and the Sufi Hallaj crying, "I asked my Lord with the eye of the heart, 'Who are you?' And he said, 'You.'" In that moment of recognition, separation collapses. The seeker realizes that the one they adored from afar was dwelling within them all along. Bhakti is the heart's final awakening, the discovery that the divine is not a distant presence to be reached, but the very essence of our being. When the heart turns toward that truth, love becomes liberation, and the soul returns to the love from which it was born.
Chapter 16 Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. If Karma Yoga is the path of selfless action, Bhakti Yoga the path of selfless love, then Jnana Yoga is the path of selfless understanding. In Sanskrit, Jnana means knowledge born of insight. Ignorance is not destroyed by effort or belief, but by clarity. Just as darkness cannot be swept away with a broom, but disappears the moment a lamp is lit, so avidya vanishes in the light of jnana. This knowledge is not intellectual or conceptual. It is direct seeing, the realization of what has always been true. Plato described this awakening through his allegory of the cave. He spoke of prisoners chained in darkness, mistaking shadows for reality. When one prisoner breaks free and steps into the light, his eyes ache at first, but gradually he perceives the true world, luminous, vast and real. If he returns to the cave, those still bound may mock him, unable to imagine a greater light. So too with the awakening of jhana. The soul, long accustomed to the play of appearances, resists truth at first, for it overturns everything it once believed. But when the inner eye adjusts to the radiance of awareness,
It recognizes that the bondage it feared was never real. The chains existed only in imagination. Every seeker on this path begins with the same inward turning. Who am I? Am I the body which is born, grows, ages and passes away? Am I the mind which shifts from thought to thought like clouds across the sky? Am I the emotions which surge and subside without rest? When all that I take to be me is seen, who is the one that sees? Jnana Yoga invites the seeker to follow this question back to its source, to examine the very foundations of experience. Ramana Maharshi expressed this essence with unmatched simplicity. For him, the entire spiritual journey rested on a single inquiry: who am I? The question was never meant to produce an intellectual answer, but to strip away every false identification. Each time the mind grasped at the body, personality, memory, or emotion as I, he urged the seeker to look deeper. What is aware of these? Who witnesses their rise and fall? Pursued with sincerity, this inquiry causes the ego to dissolve like a dream at dawn, revealing the self as pure awareness, silent, radiant, ever present. The self, he said, is not something to be attained. It is your very nature. Krishna reveals the nature of the self with extraordinary simplicity. The unreal never is. The real never ceases to be. Bhagavad Gita 2.16. To help the seeker realize this, the sages taught neti neti, not this, not this. Not the body which is observed, not the mind which fluctuates, not the thoughts which arise and fade, not even the sense of I am this, which is itself a thought. When all that is impermanent is set aside, what remains is pure awareness, the light in which all experience appears. The Chandogya Upanishad proclaims, all this is Brahman. From it all things arise, by it they live, into it they return. Chandogya Upanishad 3.14.1. The knower of Brahman sees the divine everywhere, in pain and joy, in life and death, in movement and stillness. The boundaries of me and you dissolve, and love becomes the natural state of being. The Buddha also taught that liberation arises from direct insight or prajna, not belief. He said, when one sees with wisdom that all formations are impermanent, one turns away from suffering. This is the path to purity. Dhammapada 277. The liberated one does not escape the world, but moves within it in unshakable serenity. Pleasure and pain, gain and loss, honor and insult, all are seen as passing ripples on the surface of consciousness. Nothing can disturb the stillness of one who knows the truth. This serenity begins with a simple act of inner discernment and resolve. Krishna commands the seeker. Physical sensations, cold and heat, pleasure and pain, are transient. They come and they go. So bear them with grace, O Arjuna. For the man who is wholly unmoved by their sway, indifferent to pleasure, indifferent to pain, is fit for the state that transcends life and death. Bhagavad Gita 2.14-15. This unshakable serenity is the sign of true realization. As Arjuna asked Krishna, how can one recognize such a sage in the world? Krishna replied, he who is unattached in all conditions, who is neither delighted by good fortunes nor dejected by tribulations. He is a sage with perfect knowledge. One who is able to withdraw the senses from their objects, just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs into its shell, is established in divine wisdom. Bhagavad Gita 2.57, 2.58. This stillness arises from a profound recognition. The seeker searches the entire universe for the divine, forgetting that the one searching is the one they seek. The journey that began in ignorance ends not in attainment, but in rest. The seeker realizes that even the search was part of the illusion. The self was never hidden, it was only unseen.
Chapter 17, Raja Yoga, the path of stillness. If Karma Yoga purifies action and Bhakti Yoga purifies the heart, then Raja Yoga purifies the mind. Often called the royal path, Raja Yoga is the science of inner stillness. The sages describe the mind as a lake. When stirred by thought, desire, fear, or memory, its surface fractures and distorts what it reflects. But when the lake grows calm, the water becomes clear and truth shines through without effort. Raja Yoga is the art of quietening this lake until the self reveals itself. Krishna teaches this discipline in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, one of the earliest and most complete instructions on meditation. He does not send Arjuna to a forest or monastery. Instead, he teaches him how to find stillness in the midst of duty. Meditation, Krishna says, is the mastery of attention. Quote, "Let him hold body, head and neck erect, steady and unmoving. Let him gaze at the point of the nose with a tranquil mind." Bhagavad Gita 6.30. Krishna also describes breath as the doorway that draws awareness inward. Quote, "Balancing inhalation and exhalation that flow through the nostrils, the yogi with senses and mind controlled becomes free from fear and anger." Bhagavad Gita 5.27-28. And again, quote, "When the mind becomes still and restrained by practice, it rests in the self alone." Bhagavad Gita 6.20. Arjuna's reply is strikingly human. Quote, "The mind is restless, turbulent, powerful. To restrain it seems harder than controlling the wind." Bhagavad Gita 6.34. Krishna does not deny this. He offers the essential method. Quote, "Through practice and detachment, Arjuna, the mind is brought under control." Bhagavad Gita 6.35. Effort, he says, not force, is the way. Quote, "Yoga is difficult for the unrestrained, but one who strives sincerely can succeed." Bhagavad Gita 6.36. The ancient texts describe the mind as a restless monkey, leaping from branch to branch, endlessly pulled outward by the senses. Raja Yoga does not cage this monkey, it teaches it to settle. As attention turns inward, the energy once lost in restlessness becomes a quiet radiance. Modern neuroscience now confirms what the yogis discovered. Meditation softens reactivity, steadies attention, calms internal storms, and nurtures compassion. But these findings only point toward a deeper truth, the recognition of awareness beyond thought. Raja Yoga is not mastered overnight. It is a gentle, persistent discipline. At first, the mind wanders and old fears rise. Frustration appears, but slowly, practice becomes devotion, and devotion becomes stillness. The mind settles the way sediment drifts to the bottom of a clear pond. As the mind grows quiet, a simple truth appears. The seeker is not the mind, but the one who observes it. Thoughts arise and fade, yet the witness remains unchanged. As attention deepens, the distinction between meditator, meditation, and the object of meditation begins to dissolve. When thought falls silent, the mind becomes transparent and awareness shines in its own light. This is samadhi. It is a direct seeing of life's true nature. In this clarity, there is no subject or object, no seeker or sought,
only the luminous presence of the self. The Buddhist tradition describes this mastery of concentration through the 4 dhyanas or stages of deep absorption. This sequential progression provides a clear map for the mind's journey into stillness. 1. First dhyana. The mind separates from ordinary distractions marked by initial directed thought, investigation, intense rapture, piti, and joy, sukh. 2. Second dhyana. Directed thought and investigation cease, rapture and joy remain, and the mind achieves profound internal stillness and unification. 3. Third dhyana. Rapture fades, replaced by a deep, unwavering contentment and clear comprehension. The happiness is more subtle and enduring. 4. Fourth dhyana. All feelings, pain, pleasure, and even the happiness of the previous stage are transcended, giving way to pure luminous equanimity and awareness. Both Raja Yoga and the Buddhist dhyanas offer the same conclusion. The path to liberation is a science of interior attention, a method for purifying and stilling the mind until truth is revealed. In this state, the lake of the mind is perfectly still. There are no waves to distort the truth. There is only the light of the self shining in its own eternal glory.
Chapter 18. Path to God. The sages have long said that truth is one, though the wise call it by many names. So too with the spiritual disciplines. Karma, Bhakti, Jnana and Raja Yoga appear as 4 distinct paths, each aligned with a different temperament. The one drawn to service finds strength in Karma Yoga. The tender-hearted gravitate toward Bhakti. The contemplative lean towards Jnana. The lover of God finds a natural stillness arising in meditation. The meditator sees insight rising from within like a flame without fuel. The seeker of knowledge discovers compassion for all beings. The yogas contain one another as seeds. As these seeds mature, the distinctions soften. The karma yogi becomes contemplative. The bhakta becomes serene. The jnani becomes tender. The raja yogi becomes selfless. Each yoga purifies a different aspect of the human being. Karma purifies intention. Bhakti purifies emotion. Jnana purifies understanding. Raja Yoga purifies attention. Yet all 4 awaken the same indivisible truth. The world is not divided. The seeker is not divided. Consciousness is one. The Bhagavad Gita affirms this unity with unmistakable clarity. By whatever path they come to me, by that path do I welcome them. All paths, Arjuna, lead to me. Yet the sages tell us that these paths are tools, nothing more, nothing less. They purify the heart and steady the mind. But once perception becomes clear, the tools fall away. The sages give a timeless simile, the finger pointing to the moon. The finger is essential, but only if one remembers to look past it. Teachings, scriptures, and techniques are the finger. Consciousness is the moon. When the seeker matures, he stops clinging to the finger. He looks directly. Scripture cannot deliver what must be realized. Only awareness itself can guide the final steps. The Gita warns against mistaking the finger for the moon. Foolish men talk of religion in cheap, sentimental words, leaning on the scriptures as God speaks here and here alone. Driven by desire for pleasure and power, caught up in ritual, they strive to gain heaven. But rebirth is the only result of their striving. The scriptures dwell in duality.
Be beyond all opposites, Arjuna, anchored in the real and free from all thoughts of wealth and comfort. The scriptures are invaluable, but only as a raft to cross the river, not as a burden to carry once the crossing is made. When the mind becomes transparent, the seeker sees directly what the scriptures were trying to express in words. In that moment, the paths dissolve. Action becomes meditation. Meditation becomes love. Love becomes knowledge. Knowledge becomes wonder. The seeker stops striving and rests in the simplicity of being. The mind grows steady. The heart opens. Action becomes pure. Love becomes effortless. The self shines everywhere. This is the secret revealed by the Upanishads. This is the truth Arjuna glimpsed at the battlefield. This is the discovery made by every sincere heart. The paths are many. The truth is one. The one is within.
Chapter 19. The Universe Within. When we look up at the night sky, the sheer scale of it can feel overwhelming. Billions of stars scattered across boundless space, swirling in galaxies beyond number. And here we stand, a single species, on a small blue world, wondering who we are and what all this means. We love, we lose, we struggle, we rejoice. We live a brief arc between birth and death and try to understand our place within the vastness. That question has haunted humanity since the beginning. We built myths, temples, sciences, and philosophies to answer it. Yet none of them could quiet the faint ache inside us, because no matter how far outward we search, a quiet intuition remains. There is something more. We are more. Thousands of years ago, the sages of India carried the same longing. But instead of searching outward, they turned inward. They did not try to grasp what lies beyond the stars. They sought to know the one asking the question. In the silence of forests and the depths of meditation, they discovered something vast and intimate, something beyond language yet closer than breath. They called it Brahman. They struggled to describe it because truth cannot be captured fully in words. So they offered metaphors, paradoxes, and scriptures, not as final answers, but as doorways. The scriptures were never meant to be the prison of belief, but an instrument of liberation. As the Bhagavad Gita says, as unnecessary as a well is to a village on the banks of a river, so unnecessary are all scriptures to the one who has seen the truth. Bhagavad Gita 2.46. For this reason, Sanatana Dharma never insisted on a single path. The truth does not belong to any book, any ritual, any god, any sect. It can be reached through love, through knowledge, through action, through meditation, or through any practice that makes the heart still and the mind clear enough to recognize what has always been here. The same intelligence that curves space and gives birth to stars pervades your entire being. Every atom in your body was forged in the furnace of ancient suns. You are not separate from the universe. You are a moment in which the cosmos becomes conscious of itself. Carl Sagan said, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." The sages went one step further. They realized we are not merely the universe knowing itself, we are the universe being itself. Yet understanding this with the mind is not enough. You can tell a suffering person that they are the universe, but it will not ease their pain until they experience it directly. until they sit in stillness and discover that the boundary between self and world softens, until they sense a presence within them that does not come and go. That presence is the self. That recognition is yoga. All the forms, stories, and philosophy in Hinduism are tools to guide the mind toward that recognition. They teach, comfort, and inspire. They refine emotion, discipline the mind, and clear the vision to help the seeker walk the early stages of the path. But they are not the final truth. The final truth cannot be spoken because it is beyond words. It cannot be thought of because it is beyond thinking. It can only be realized. When the mountain air grows thin, ladders cannot help you. At a certain height, all tools fall away. What remains is the guidance of your own awareness. In the end, the journey returns you to where you began. Who is the one seeing the stars? Who is the one longing to know? Who is the one reading these words? It is the recognition of what you have always been, the awareness behind all thoughts, the silence behind all sounds, the love in which the whole universe rises and falls. We began as a speck of dust looking up at the stars, asking who we are. We end by realizing that the stars were looking through our eyes all along. And so the sages prayed, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityur ma amritam gamaya. Lead me from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality.
You were always sand. I stood at the edge of her endless sea, a rock convinced of all I could be, proud of my shape, certain and strong, never imagining I could be wrong. My high-walled ego, rigid and vast, believed its hardened form would last. But her soft waves returned with patient grace, slowly smoothing the edges of my face. She whispered gently, "You were always sand," and showed the illusion of my command. Now as I knock on annihilation's door, I feel no fear, only something more. This is no tragedy, no breaking apart, but the unmasking of my truest heart. Grain by grain, I let myself fall, answering fully the deep water's call, where sand meets water and both are free. I surrender at last to my beloved sea. No walls remain, no need to be strong, only the truth that I'd been hers all along.
Leela, the cosmic game. In the silence before there was future or past, the Brahman grew weary of being so vast. It wanted a story, a shape, and a name, so it shattered itself for the love of the game. It poured into starlight, it hardened to bone, it left the great union to wander alone. It crafted a mask out of joy and of fear, and forgot that it was the whole universe here. You act in the drama, you weep and you fight, convincing yourself that the shadows are bright. But look in the mirror, who acts in the play? The light that you seek is lighting the way. So drop the burden, the guilt, and the facade. The seeking is over. You always were God.
We hope you enjoyed this production of The One Within, the heart of Hindu philosophy,
written by Vikas Agarwal, narrated by Dharmesh.